Shalom Chaverim, and welcome to the first video about The Three Sons of Asha, my fantasy novel. And so I wanted to offer kind of an origin story of how did this even come about? Well, let me tell you something. First and foremost, I wasn't like a big fiction reader. I learned at some point that one of the things that I didn't like about reading was that I was so focused on trying to create images in my head that I wasn't really paying attention. And then, as it turned out, I have ADHD. And so I always really watched television and movies, but the television and movies that I would watch were of the, in my opinion, higher echelon. And so I was always a fan of like fiction and of high art in that particular way. Not, of course, like in like the super pretentious films, but just in general, like looking at fiction from the perspective of, was it a good story? Did the plot make sense? Are the characters interesting? And so on. And then in COVID, I got back into fiction with an absolutely amazing book called Jade City by Fonda Lee. It's part of the Green Bone saga. Now, I'm not going to take you through the whole story, but the long and the short of it was that I was getting into Reddits and I saw how much I enjoyed kind of analyzing fiction in the literary sense. And then in the summer of 2022, I was fired by a venture capitalist fund, and I was watching a lot of television at the time. And I realized that I really needed a creative outlet and something to keep my mind off of the fact that I was unemployed and rudderless at the time. And then, weirdly enough, I was watching a procedural, which I don't normally do, called Lucifer, which, again, procedurals are not my thing. I find them to be kind of like lowbrow. But this one was interesting because of the concept behind it. And I thought that the guy, I can't remember his name, who played Lucifer was a really interesting character. And so then the first season was good overall because, it's new and everything. But then as they get into the second and third seasons, they really started to explore the lore of this particular take on Christian theology. And also like Christian mythology as well. And I started to ask questions like, I wonder what the other angels are. And one of the really interesting things that I learned was that our understanding of like Christian angels is not actually what it really is. Like we think of the archangel Gabriel, the archangel Michael. But as it turns out, like Gabriel and Michael and Uriel and all of those other angels, they actually are like, I think kind of like lower on the totem pole than we think that they are. There's like a whole angel called Metatron, and sometimes it's believed that that's Michael, but not necessarily. I don't remember. But the point was that I started realizing that the way of thinking about Christian mythology was really fascinating because we always see fiction with Greek mythology or Roman mythology, or we use a lot of some of the spirits in the East Asian type of based books and fiction. And I was wondering because I feel like obviously you have a lot of the use of Christianity, but Christianity is always like evil in books, right? It's never actually something that's well thought out of. And so I started digging in a little bit more. And then it turns out that there's actually a lot more to Jewish mythology than we believe there is, because we assume that as, not necessarily believing in a lot of the same things like the angels or the saints or anything like that, that Judaism doesn't necessarily have it. But as it turns out, it very much does. And then I started looking into Zoroastrianism because I wanted to look into another type of monotheistic religion, and Zoroastrianism is actually a super fascinating religion. And so all of a sudden I started to think about what would it be like to combine all of these together, and that it also includes some aspects from Islam as well as also like pre-Islamic Arabia. So I put this all together and I created a religion first and foremost. And after I created this religion, I thought to myself, what would it be like for a world to be created based on this religion. And that's ultimately the starting point. And it was a really, really wonderful process of being able to, one, create something from scratch, but more so than anything, the reason that I did this, or I guess the way that I started this, was from the perspective of what would happen if a world looked at religion from a positive perspective. And the reason that I wanted to start from that point of view was because I have a really beautiful relationship with Judaism. I know a lot of people that have really beautiful relationships with Judaism, and more so than that, I have a lot of friends, and I know a lot of people who have really beautiful relationships with Christianity, with Islam, with other religions. And I think that a lot of people, especially those who engage in fantasy and science fiction, don't really have a positive view of religion. A lot of the books that I read, it's very clear that the religion in the book is to be looked at from the place of corruption or from evil or anything of the sort, while the people who are fighting against the religion of any kind are to be looked at as the heroes. That religion is oppressive and that the people, the heroes, are the ones fighting against the oppressive religion. And I just don't necessarily think that that's fair, because there are so many people that have such positive relationships with religion. And so I decided to make a world that was based on the idea that everybody is in fact religious. Everybody is devout. And so the contention is just like in real life, where you have devout Protestants and devout Catholics. You have devout Shiites and devout Sunnis. You have devout Orthodox. You have devout conservative Jews, devout Reform Jews. There's a lot of different sects of religion in every religion. And that creates contention and conflict within those people, but nonetheless, they still believe the same thing, and they ultimately believe that religion is and can be a force for good. And so I thought to myself, what would happen if people read a fantasy book where religion was neither evil nor good, but rather just is? So I'll stop there for now, and stay tuned for the next part in the series that is the origin story of the three sons of Asha. Shalom Aleichem.